Hi everyone, Patty here with a great backyard fun project, stamping leaves on a jelly plate. This is my second video on this project, and for more fun backyard projects, check out my website at www.westmeadowgardens.com. Let's gather our supplies so they are handy before we start. My favorite paints are the Lumiere by Jacquard. They add a shimmer and sparkle. Also, the Distress Oxide inks add a beautiful airy watercolor effect. I have 2 jelly plates and I'm using the larger one. I have a stack of blank index cards that are 4" by 6" size. Also deli paper, old torn out book pages so I can have matching collage pages, and watercolor paper. My plan is to make a horticultural field journal with these pages, so my paper vary in size so I can fold them in half and then add them to my signatures. I don't like all of my pages to be the same size when making my field journal. I have a purple Lumiere paint that I will add to my jelly plate, along with a green color shift paint that looks lime green. I love these 2 colors together. I just spread it around with my palette knife in various places on the jelly plate. I feel my purple is kind of overpowering the color scheme, so I went back and added a little more of the lime green. Don't stack your book pages of wet paint onto each other, as they will stick. You will need to have a place for all of these pages to dry as you go, because you don't just make 1 or 2 prints. Once you start, you can't quit. But I won't waste any of these little pieces, as they will be great in collage making, because you can still see the text through it. And I will work on those pages later, showing you some other fun things to do with them. I just clean my brayer off onto the back of that and get a little more color. Spread your leaves around on the plate. I go over all of the different leaves that I use in the first jelly print video. Making sure you space them out for they're not overlapping. I took 2 prints with watercolor paper on the jelly plate. That watercolor paper just came in a pack by 5 by 9" size. I go crazy with the index cards and keep stamping away onto them. I really got some nice imprints with these colors. I don't want to waste the leaves with all of that paint on each one, so I just stamp it off onto the index card. It just fits it perfectly. Then I'll be able to write something on the back of those index cards explaining the type of leaf, the colors I used. You can either decide if you want to make it more of an art journal and going and talking about your techniques and writing about the techniques that you've used to make it, or talking about the leaves and the colors and the plant itself. Or maybe do a little bit of both. I love the maidenhair fern. So delicate and airy. The book page has been ripped up with stacking wet paint together. I added a little more color from the jelly plate. Just brayer right over it. Get as much. It's cleaning off your jelly plate and adding paint to your book page. I use some Liquitex acrylic ink and my paintbrush and make a few circles, X's, and marks onto the page. I will end up ripping these up and adding more depth to my collages. I love seeing the type from the old book page under the paint. It really gives your collage a nice focal point. I outline one of the leaves that's imprinted on that book page. Make sure and set those aside and let them dry, not stacking them. Here I've got some gloss spray from Diana Wakley, but it doesn't spray anymore, so I apply it with a paintbrush to the veins of the leaf. Don't forget to go down the stem also with this. You won't be able to see this as well as you can off camera, but it really adds a nice touch to the piece because you're stamping in the void that's white with a gloss white on kind of a matte white. So it's white on white, and it's a very light look, and you see that vein going down in the white on white. It really adds a nice. I put another piece of paper there because my leaf was going to go off the side, and I want to collect every bit of paint. Just brayer right over the top of the leaf and get all of that ink on there. Like I said, you really can't see it here, but in real life, it's just gorgeous. I also added back Liquitex acrylic ink to the fern and stamped those to my void spots on the pages. And this shows off the veining nicely too. Now I'm going to use my Distress Oxide ink stamp pads. I encourage you not to use a leaf that you've already gooped all up with your acrylic paints. The leaf may not fit the first impression perfectly, but make sure it's just maybe a little bit smaller, but it does add just enough airy light look to the whole imprint. Spray the leaf with a little water after you've inked it up. Sorry, that's a little bit off camera, but after you've inked it up on the pad, spray it with a little bit of water, and that gives you the more watercolory effect that I'm looking for with the oxide inks. The more water you use, the more watercolory it will look. It will run a little bit. Getting the leaf into the ink pad is a messy part of this project, and my fingers were stained, but I think it was well worth the outcome. Be careful you don't spray it with too much water. I do like that watercolor look. I'm looking for all of the ones that I've imprinted where there's a big void spot in the center, and I'm going back and adding some veining from the leaves. The Australian poplar leaf doesn't have much vein, but I like the shape of the leaf, and I ended up wiping most of the oxide ink off because it was done in this brown color and it just did not do too much for it. But I did like just that little hint of color. I have an Archival Ranger ink pad, and I tried the hosta leaf as it has a good vein. The maidenhair fern is a little more delicate and now a little more ink onto the hands. I tried the brayer with the larger leaf, as now I have the archival ink all over the brayer as well as my hands. But again, well worth the mess, as I love seeing a light vein look to my prints. The raspberry leaf does have nice veining too. And the black archival ink shows up. When finished, you can add a few doodle dots and circles to your piece to define areas. The one on the bottom left, when looking close, you can see circles and dots from the first imprint of the Gelli print, and then the leaves over the top. You never get two prints the same, and each has its own beauty. Don't forget to check out my website and get more fun backyard projects at www.westmeadowgardens.com.